Okay, raise your hand if you've ever bought anything from eBay. Meg Whitman was the mastermind, as you know, of eBay. When she started out, I think it was 1998, she had about 30 employees. 10 years later, I guess 15,000. There's a startup that grew, scaled up, grew fast. And that was Meg Whitman to put that together. She's now the CEO of one of the largest tech companies, Hewlett Packard, 15th on Forbes 100 most powerful women list. Let's give a big round of applause. She'll hear us, but she's in Palo Alto right now, and she's going to speak to us, and I'm going to ask her a couple of questions, and I'll do the very best I can to try to focus in on what I think all of you have in mind is the best questions should be. But let's first, let's hear it for Meg Whitman. Meg?
Thank you.
Meg.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for having me today. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but I am happy to participate remotely. And in today's high-tech world, almost anything is possible. It's a pleasure to be asked to speak at the Montana Economic Summit. I bet not very many of you know this is my second time doing this, but the first time as the CEO of HP. I'd also like to recognize the citizens of Montana, especially Senator Baucus, for hosting this terrific event, and thank him for his many, many years of service in government. You'll be missed when you retire from the Senate at the end of the year.
Thank you.
No one in Washington has worked harder to grow the economy and create jobs than Senator Baucus. Now, I thought I'd just take a couple of minutes to share some of my thoughts about the IT industry, where it stands today, and how innovation can help us all navigate this exceedingly complex world. We are living in some pretty exciting times, I have to say. The world in which we live and work is changing faster than at least I ever thought possible. Doesn't it seem like everything is moving faster? And technology is the driving change agent of our time. And HP and many other technology companies are uniquely positioned to help customers manage and thrive in this dynamic world. You know, for many years, HP has helped customers manage the most complex challenges in ways that very few other companies can. I think we're unique because we're equally strong in devices, infrastructure, software, and services, from cloud and security to big data. And we're uniquely qualified because invention and innovation are the core values for Hewlett Packard. They're in our DNA. And for those of you who run founder-run companies out there, you'll be happy to know it turns out it's very hard to kill founder DNA. And the spirit of Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard are very much alive in this company 75 years later. Now, what we do is we use innovation, breadth, depth, and years of experience to help customers navigate the changing world at their speed and on their own terms. You know, my view is we're standing at the next major inflection point in our industry. The shifts being driven by trends such as cloud, security, big data, and mobility. And these trends are affecting every industry, every company, and frankly, governments across the globe. The shift changes the way technology is consumed, delivered, and paid for, and demands what I call the new style of IT, which is in reality a new style of business powered by IT. I've been in this business a long time, and this type of shift happens once every 10 to 15 years. Think back, the shift from the mainframe to the client-server environment, from client-server to Web 1.0, from Web 1.0 to mobile and web services. You know, I had a chance, as Senator Baucus said, to sit at the front seat of the revolution from the client-server environment to Web 1.0 when I was at eBay. And what I know is when these types of shifts happen, everything changes, and IT becomes more important. So what we're trying to do in this huge shift is to help businesses, nonprofits, governments, and entrepreneurs alike to navigate this change. And no other company can provide the connective tissue for companies transitioning to this new style of IT. And this ability is going to set us apart, and it's going to set apart competitors who succeed in this new world order. And we spent years perfecting our ability to help navigate some pretty tough challenges for our customers. So we're aligned about helping customers build a better enterprise by providing innovative solutions for this new style of IT. And what I've found is that companies that put a priority on innovation, go to market with products and services that in turn spark creative thinking for their customers, those are the people who win in the marketplace. So that's our commitment, to provide customers with innovative products and services. We're trying to do it better than we've ever done it before. And we're delivering not only in our go-to-market strategy, but we're also trying to couple that with our social innovation strategy. With that said, I'm pleased to announce today a new partnership with the National Association for Community Colleges Entrepreneurship to bring entrepreneurship training to the community college ecosystem through the HP Life e-learning initiative. We're rolling this initiative out in a handful of colleges where the best-in-class online learning is enriching the teaching and learning experience. So in Montana, we'll be working with interested leaders and faculty to integrate HP Life into community colleges, tribal colleges, and universities across your great state. So with U.S. colleges counting in the thousands, there's profound potential to make a positive difference in job creation and grow healthy local economies. America's economic future depends on the skills of its workforce. And we're trying our hardest to collaborate with education leaders, institutions, and governments to develop classroom and, importantly, beyond the classroom initiatives to improve graduates' job prospects and help them succeed in an increasingly complex and very demanding economy. We see education as a key enabler of innovation, and we're thrilled to partner with NACCE in this program. So from the innovation we're driving to the solutions that we're offering to the way we run our business and work with our customers, we're aligned around helping customers build a better enterprise, capitalize on the new style of IT, help train the next generation of folks who understand IT and can enhance the way we live and work. So thanks very much for having me. And Senator Baucus, I'd love to answer questions on any subject. You might recall I ran for public office, so nothing hurts my feelings.
We all learn that, whether it's in private life or public life. We just do our very best, just go forward, doing the best we can. Thank you very much, Meg. Which leads me to a question. You are a great innovator and someone who relishes challenge. For example, you put together eBay, big challenge. And then you ran for governor, try to turn around California, big challenge. Then you're now heading up HP, big challenge, especially with all the changes happening in the technology sector and what HP is going through and all companies are going through. Here at home, we have a lot of small businesses, a lot of mid-sized businesses. We're all facing challenges. And a common theme I hear is, gee, I'd like to do this, but how do they do that? We're so challenged in so many different ways. We like the challenge. We embrace it, but we're trying to figure out next steps, how to grow our companies. So if you could just give us your insights, you're a challenger. You like challenges. And you've been very successful with your challenges. So just if you could just give us a couple insights and advice for companies as they strive to address their challenges.
Sure. You know, a lot of people say, isn't running eBay completely different than running Hewlett-Packard? And yes, the size and scale is different. Even HP, when I left, was an $8 billion company with 15,000 employees. Hewlett-Packard is a $120 billion company with 300,000 employees. But there's many similarities. First is focus. What is your company going to do better than anyone else? And how are you going to focus the resources to do, at first, a small number of things really well? And I'll tell you a little story. When I was at eBay, I arrived on the scene with about 30 employees. And we were trying to sort of say, which way do we want to take eBay? And what we knew is our heaviest users, the earliest people to come to eBay, were collectors. Coin collectors, stamp collectors, Barbie doll collectors, you name it. And the choice was, do we focus in on building that collectibles market, or do we go out into computers and apparel And the conventional wisdom was you've got to go to bigger markets. And we actually made a very important decision at eBay, which is we wanted to focus on what had brought us to the table. The heaviest users were collectors, and we said we've got to be the definitive online trading market for collectibles. And of course, what happened is collectors branched out into consumer electronics, who brought other sellers who did apparel and you name it. But that decision to focus on what we were distinctly different at and what we were going to make our mark on was really important. The other thing that is important is whether you have 3 employees or 300,000 is you've got to have the right people in the right job at the right time, importantly, with the right attitude. And so my job as the CEO of HP is I've got to make sure that my division heads, my functional heads, and the next sort of 200 people in the company, if I don't have the right person in the right job, I almost always see it in the business results, the customer care results, the manufacturing results. So those are 2 things that I think are incredibly important. And when you're growing a company, or even as the market changes, you've got to check right person, right job, right time. Because when I was at eBay, someone who was perfect when the company was 300 million in revenues was not quite necessarily the right person for that job when the company was $1 billion in revenue. So those would be a couple things I'd offer up.
Question that's getting up to scale. The challenges of moving from a small company to the next step up. In addition to having the right people, the right spot for the scale, for the change, any other thoughts that come to mind, advice you can pass on?
Yeah, I mean, I think, this is also founders have got to be very careful about whether they can run the company and scale all the way up. And you always have to cover your weaknesses. And so if you're running a small company and you're growing pretty fast, maybe you're going from 10 employees to 50 to 150 to 350, just make sure you are surrounding yourself with people who have skills you don't have, because that is the key to scaling. And for example, when I was at eBay, when we got to probably about $250 million, I decided I had to have an operating executive at my side, because I am more of a strategist. I have a sort of a real consumer focus. I love talking to our customers, but companies have to have an operating cadence. And so I actually hired a terrific guy named Maynard Webb, who was my partner for 8 years at eBay. And he deserves a huge amount of credit, because eBay would not have been what it turned out to be without Maynard Webb. So you've got to always cover your weaknesses. And listen, no one does everything well. You just have to know yourself, what you want to do, what you like to do, and then make sure you've got someone else. Maybe it could be your husband or your wife or your son or daughter. It doesn't necessarily need to be someone, from the outside, but you've got to find someone who can solve the problems that you can't solve, or at least can solve them faster than you.
As you probably know, yesterday, Sheryl Sandberg was here. Sheryl talked about her book, Lean In, lots of advice for women, what can be done to get further ahead. You were Sheryl Sandberg before there was a Sheryl Sandberg. I mean, you were the first. You were the first, one of the first women, I think, to get into Princeton. You put together, eBay and ran for governor, et cetera, and now HP. Advice for women. Sheryl gave us a certain set of points that she thought were very important. But you've been there. You've done it. Your thoughts? How can women in Montana get even further ahead? I might preface it by saying, as you know, that we're proud of women in our state. Jeanette Rankin, the first member of Congress, was a Montanan. And as you might know, she got elected to Congress when women couldn't even vote, but she still got elected. And ran a second time, got elected as well. So it's something we're an open state, and we're a pioneering kind of state, but advice for women. What's your advice for women?
Yeah, that's a remarkable story. I happen to know that story, and it's quite a remarkable, I think it's a testament to sort of the spirit of Montana. So listen, I would have a couple of thoughts. One is find something that you love to do. We are going to spend a lot of time at work. And so if you love what you do, this is going to be, I think we're all better at things we enjoy. And so find your passion. Is it a consumer product? Is it a B2B opportunity? Is it ranching? Is it Opening a small store? Is it nursing? Is it healthcare? And find what you love. And then have confidence in yourself. And I'm quite an admirer of this next generation of women because they are, I think, have a lot more confidence maybe than we did when we started out. When I started at Procter & Gamble in 1979, I graduated from business school. They had hired 100 what they call brand assistants, kind of like marketing assistants at Procter & Gamble. There were 100 in that class. Only 4 of us were women. And I'll tell you a little story. We had a full day of training, and at the end of the day, they handed out credit cards to everyone, company credit cards, saying you're going to have to go to the ad agency, you're going to have to go see what your product looks like on shelves in supermarkets. And everyone got a credit card except for the 4 girls. And we sort of looked at each other and we said, And we walked up at the end to the sort of session leader, and we said, I'm sure there's a mistake here, but we're the only 4 that didn't get credit cards. And he looked at us and he said, we were worried about that, but we think it's unsafe for women to travel alone. And we sort of looked at each other and said, well, that's going to be a bit of a problem here. And, then we just worked through the system. And sure enough, 30 days later, we had the company credit cards like everyone else. But you've got to have confidence in yourself. You've got to love what you do. And you've got to do it really well. I mean, there is no substitute for results, for accountability, for delivering on the promises that you say you're going to deliver on. And then the other advice I always give to every young person, whether male or female, is, be easy to work with. If I have a choice of 2 executives who are equally competent for the next job, every time I will go with the one who's easier to work with, fun to be around, a great team member that can make the whole organization better, as opposed to someone who's, a little harder, maybe prickly. So I think, you have to sort of just really understand the dynamics of people like to work with people who are fun to be with. And so I think that's another really important thing. And then I think for young people, I'd say, go to the best college that you can get into, take the hardest major that you can handle, and that's going to set you up for better success, in the years ahead. I mean, I remember I was an economics major at Princeton. I took econometrics, which is sort of like statistics modeling. I was completely lost. But having mastered that course sort of gave me confidence that, I could take on the next challenge. So lots of different paths, but those would be a few things I'd say.
What can Montanans businesses do with respect to Asia? I remember when we had lunch together a good number of years ago. You were then at eBay, and I asked you, what's the greatest new market potential? What new markets? And you right away said China. In fact, you told me that time, You're so bullish on China, you're sending your one of your sons to go to high school for a year in China. Now, this is a few years later. What China advice or Asia advice, exports, business advice do you have?
Yeah. So listen, China and other parts of Asia are real growing economies. 41% of Hewlett-Packard's business is in Europe. The problem is Europe's not really growing. The United States is beginning to grow again. I'm actually quite hopeful about feeling like the U.S. economy is turning a bit, but I've got to tell you, China, Indonesia, a lot of these places have huge population growth, very young populations. Their disposable income is increasing. So they are turning into real consumers. And I think there is an opportunity for many businesses in the United States to really think hard about how they could open up an export market for their products, whether it's consumer products, machinery, tool and die. Still, the Chinese economy is very interested in doing business with American companies. So listen, I think no matter, you got to have a certain scale, right? But I just think that's a good idea for everyone to explore. And I would probably prioritize China even over Russia, Brazil, and even over India. India's challenge, and we do a lot of business in India, the infrastructure in India is not as robust as the infrastructure in China. You go to China, it's remarkable. I'm sure you've been there, Senator. The airports, the roads, the infrastructure that they are putting in is important for business. And so I'd probably say even 5 years later, and you're right, my son spent his senior year in high school living in Beijing, China with a Chinese family going to Beijing Middle School number 2. And that was an eye-opener for him. He speaks fluent Chinese, and it's been a really good experience for him to understand, I think, what is an emerging culture with a people that are hungry for success and hungry to do things. It's a remarkable place. You know, you've got to be cautious. There's lots of issues around doing business in China, but I think it's a big opportunity for Montana businesses.
How do you handle IP in China?
Very carefully. Very carefully.
Meg, our time's up here. You've been very, very gracious at giving us so much of your time. It's a real inspiration here, just all that you've done, how you've done it, probably especially for women. Great role model. And just, we thank you so very, very much for what you've done. Thanks. Meg Whitman.
Well, thank you for inviting me.